Hello everyone, I am Lore, and today, my hair's not, today we're talking about vampires. So quick, note, I guess. I think I have a cold. I've been coughing and I have a runny nose. I'm gonna do my best to edit out my coughs and my sniffles. Like that one. Myth and makeup. What I'm gonna do is tell you about different mythological creatures, lore, and I'm going to do my makeup inspired by what we're talking about. There will be two parts. The first part will be lore, how the myth came to be, the birth of the creature, and then there will be a part two. Sometimes, if there's not enough for part one, we'll just combine them. Part two, I'll have stories about what we talked about. First things first, I gotta plop up my hair. Because my husband has smart lighting in our office, we're gonna have fun with the color of lights. I figure red's appropriate. Blood for vampires. We'll see if it messes up my makeup. What is a vampire? Mythological creature that survives feeding off of the life essence of creatures. In most and traditional cases, blood. I did see I think it was a Chinese drama, might have been based off of a comic, where the vampires fed off of the talent or energy of people instead of blood. We're not talking about them today. Now, in European or Western folklore, vampires are undead humanoids originally believed to come visit loved ones and cause mischief and sometimes death. Yeah, only sometimes. Kind of like banshees. We're not going to talk banshees. I'm not going to get distracted. I just really love banshees. We'll talk about them some other day. Today's vampires. In modern times, they are generally regarded as fictitious entities, often utilized in pop culture. The concept of vampires as undead creatures, which cause harm, originated in Eastern Europe, particularly in Bulgaria, around 1,000 years ago. The earliest written reference to vampires is from 1047 in Old Russian, where the term upir, U-P-I-R, I may be saying it wrong, I apologize. I apologize throughout this video and the next one if I pronounce things incorrectly, because a lot of it is in a language that I am very much not familiar with. It was used as a euphemism to avoid saying the true name of the creature. The term's origins are uncertain, but it may have literally meant the thing at the feast or sacrifice, and historians still don't know what its real name is. Now, the word vampire is actually youngish. It was first written, as far as we know, in 1725. The vampire legend entered Western history in 1686 when imperial troops learned about it from Slavic peasants during the occupation of Hungary. And in our next video, I'm trying to move around my mic. Oh, you can see it. Anyway, this is awkward. My setup's janky. Sorry. The idea spread to cosmopolitan centers like Vienna and Berlin, and then it went to Paris, London, and the Americas. And its journey eventually transformed it into what it is today. If you can hear click-clacking in the background, that is my kitty cat. Vampire superstition thrived in the Middle Ages, especially as plagues devastated towns. Some diseases left bleeding mouth lesions on victims, which the uneducated interpreted as a sign of vampirism. They were believed to be revenants, which I always thought is like completely separate entities. So we're actually going to be doing a video of them further down the line. Maybe it's because I play Dungeons and Dragons. In case you didn't know, and just for the sake of understanding, a revenant is a spirit or animated corpse believed to come back from the dead to haunt the living. Sometimes not to haunt the living, depending on what media you're using. These were evil beings, suicide victims, or witches, but they can be created by a malevolent spirit possessing a corpse, or what we're more familiar with, being bitten by another vampire. Belief in vampires became so prevalent, it led to mass hysteria, especially when there was like tuberculosis unaliving a lot of people. It created mass hysteria, resulting in public executions of people believed to be vampires. A lot how there were the witch trials. It's very sad. As with witches, there became vampire hunters, who have appeared throughout folklore. I mean, everybody knows Van Helsing. I'm not going to assume. Maybe you don't know who Van Helsing is. We're going to talk about him in our next video, because we're going to go over a very quick retelling of Dracula. In Croatia and Slovenia during the 18th and 19th centuries, villages had vampire hunters who could turn into animals at night to fight off vampires, which probably lent to the werewolf legends. And we're going to talk a little bit more about werewolves and vampires later on. But in Eastern Europe, there are also accounts of detailed methods used to detect and destroy vampires. It's probably ugly. I didn't look it up. In Bulgaria, so this is interesting. In Bulgaria, these people were usually born on a Saturday, which would make it so they could see vampires who were invisible. Or they were the offspring of a vampire and a woman, and they would be called a dhampir. This is another subject of lore that we will eventually explore in more detail, like revenants and witches. I'm probably going to have to take the red away until we're done, because I can't really see what I'm doing. So, Alexa, set office to white. Decomposition of the human body was vastly misunderstood, especially with how the elements and conditions can affect the body and the variations to the rate in which it decomposes. When it was discovered, a corpse's hair and nails continue to grow after death, suspicions of them being undead persisted. And those who were not buried right away, but preserved in frigid conditions, like we'll kind of touch on that in our next video when we talk about the American vampire. They were also thought to be undead because of the body's conservation. I mean, you freeze something and it doesn't start going bad. You hope. Now, it was not uncommon for people to exhume the dead to see how their rottingness was progressing, and if they thought you looked alive, they would put a stake through your heart or put a really big rock in your mouth. Like, they would unhinge. And those were both believed to make it so that the vampire could not escape their grave or coffin. This was also done before burial, especially when the panic was like going crazy. Disease was also a contributor to the myth. And like many other creatures of lore or stories, the vampire was created to explain these phenomena. The most relevant disease in question is called porphyria. I keep saying porphyria. It's porphyria. So if I say I mean porphyria. Just know that. So the symptoms of porphyria weren't fun. They included extreme sensitivity to sunlight, like allergies, allergic to the sun, which can lead to facial disfigurement, blackened skin, and hair growth. All very interesting. I didn't know this. It could also cause the gums to recede, exposing the teeth so they looked like fangs. The pointiness. I mean, I guess this guy's kind of pointy. See, look. My brush is ugly. Don't judge me. I've had this since high school. Their urine would also sometimes be red. And people, they thought that meant they were drinking blood. And to be fair, some doctors were actually telling their patients of porphyria to drink animal blood to make up for the defect in their red blood cells. And since people of this condition were sensitive to the sun, people thought that they went out at night to hunt for blood. Now also, this one's fun. I mean, not fun for people who have this as a thing. Aversion to garlic was real. Like, if these people ate garlic, it would hurt. It would cause so much pain. It would just, this attack of pain. So they wouldn't eat it. As for the lack of reflection in the mirror, well, we mentioned before, and this is sad, that patients of porphyria, their face would become disfigured. The facial tissue and structure would just start to crumple, causing, you don't want to see that. You don't want to look in the mirror and see your face just melting. And so that was what was thought to have contributed to the no reflection. I'm not sure how it led to having no shadow, because in some lore, vampires don't have shadows. That leads to their appearance. Now, originally, vampires weren't pretty. Not even Dracula. In the book, not cute. We're going to talk about that in our next video. And I'm probably going to talk about it a little bit throughout, because I have issues with the way they made Dracula beautiful. Their appearance has changed throughout the years, but originally they were described as bloated, ruddy, purplish, or dark in color, attributed to recently drinking blood. This reflects a body going through decomposition, the bloating, the color discoloration, including the blood that would sometimes seep out of their nose or mouth, because it happens. Now, and we know this, they're described as unnaturally beautiful, exotic. I'm trying not to poke myself in the eye. And even seductive, with pale skin, the pallor of which is sometimes emphasized by like redness around their eyes and mouth, or dark circles under the eyes. I will not be putting dark circles under my eyes. I have rehearsal tonight, so I actually have to go out in public. I'm not going to give myself artificial dark circles. I am trying to go for reddish browns. These are very much maroon, but I have a color in here that will help fix that a bit. So vampire powers. I might randomly do accents throughout. I apologize. They're dumb, but it happens. In the original vampire myths, these nocturnal beings possessed several intriguing powers and weaknesses. We're going to cover both. Superhuman strength. We see it all the time. And, obviously it allows them to overpower their enemies with ease, except for werewolves, because they're also very strong. Speed and agility. This is emphasized often in shows like we see in Twilight. They also have quick healing, even from like injuries that should last forever or are super bad, like severe injuries, gone. Immortality. I can see how this is an alluring quality, characteristic. It doesn't make them invincible, but I've told my husband several times he's not allowed to die before me. Hypnotic influence. That's an interesting one. And actually one I take issue with when it comes to some of the choices that were made in making Dracula. Because here's the thing. He wasn't pretty. And my husband and I were discussing this, and here's the thing. It's that concept of he's hot, so it's okay. But the idea of someone taking away your agency and forcing you to do things or to draw you in or whatever against your will is very problematic to me. It feels like they were trying to make it okay by making him pretty. Because if he was an old, gross monster man, it would not be, Dracula wouldn't have become the sex icon that he now is. Shapeshifting. Some vampires could transform into creatures like bats or wolves. And we'll talk about more about wolves. Like I said, I have some interesting, fun things that I learned before I was even doing this. And I wish I could find the documentary I watched. Nowhere to be seen. Pretty sure it was on YouTube. I'm pretty sure I saved it because I was writing books as early as that. And I thought it would be really fun as a reference, but I can't find it. So if you know of a reference when we talk about it later, let me know. Weaknesses. We have talked about. Yeah. Think for a second. Porphyria explains some of these weaknesses. We talked about garlic and how it was. I need a closer mirror. I'll be right back. Okay, the lighting's way better. I forgot. One of the first gifts my husband got me when I moved in, because I had broke mine. We were talking about garlic. We talked about that before. Garlic, aversion. It's not fun for them. Holy symbols. We're going to go over a story of what was supposed to be the first vampire recorded. I understand holy symbols being considered a ward against vampires because of the time period in which they were like super prevalent. But we're going to learn that sometimes you just gotta cut a thing's head off. Sunlight, it burns their skin and can destroy them. Stakes to the heart. This will also prove to only sometimes be effective. And the wood with which these would be associated had a lot to do with what was considered effective and popular, or had significance in a culture and their presiding folklore. I don't know. That's a weird way of putting it, but that's what I'm going to say. The types of wood included, and my husband mentioned holly, but I didn't see holly in any of my research, so maybe holly. But ash, that one frequently is mentioned in Eastern European folklore, as it was believed to have protective properties against evil. Hawthorn, another popular choice, especially in Siberian traditions, where they were thought to be particularly effective against vampires. Doesn't explain why, as far as I saw. Oak, in some legends, were used due to it being a very strong and durable wood. And then in the Vampire Diaries, white oak specifically is the only way you can destroy an original vampire. The most effective way of unaliving a vampire was beheading. I can't win with this microphone. And those are the most notable ways on how to destroy them. Now, vampires had a variety of enemies throughout mythology, folklore, and modern pop culture. We mentioned this very briefly. Yes, we talked about vampire hunters. They're perhaps the most iconic enemies of vampires. Individual groups dedicated to tracking and destroying vampires. Famous vampire hunters include Abraham Van Helsing from Dracula, Bram Stoker's, and Blade from Marvel Comics. If you haven't seen the third Deadpool yet, that might be fun. And then there were werewolves. In many stories, they're depicted as natural enemies. This rivalry is prominent in series like Underworld and the Vampire Diaries. In early folklore, the relationship between vampires and werewolves was not always one of enmity. This is what I saw in the documentary that I could not find again. It's really frustrating because I was talking about a countess, not Elizabeth Bathory, and I think it was a countess, but she basically had porphyria and people thought she was a vampire. Doesn't matter though. I can't remember who she was. But in early folklore, they are sometimes allies. Okay, so we're going to talk about this a little bit. So in Eastern European folklore, in some Balkan traditions, the line between vampire and werewolves was blurred. The term Vricolicus, again, sorry if I am mispronouncing these things, I'm trying. In Greek folklore, for instance, could refer to both a vampire and a werewolf. They were like interchangeable. Seen as like different manifestations of the supernatural entity. So a vampire could be a werewolf could be a vampire. They also have shared origins in certain Slavic and Greek myths. It was believed that a person who was a werewolf in life could become a vampire after death. While explicit alliances between vampires and werewolves are rare, even in early folklore, their shared characteristics and overlapping myths suggest a form of kinship or mutual existence rather than outright hostility. The modern portrayal of vampires and werewolves as mortal enemies is a relatively recent development popularized by literature and film in the 19th and 20th centuries. Now, as compelling as the enemies thing, sometimes enemies don't lovers, sometimes the enemies thing was also just, I don't know what I'm trying to segue here. There, in some myth, very early, there were wolves, maybe werewolves. They would actually hunt victims, food for vampires, and then sit on the body to keep the blood warm for the vampire. This again was something I saw in a documentary a very long time ago, and I haven't seen any reference to it since. I just think it's a really cool concept. Another enemy to vampires are witches and wizards. In some tales, magic users are at odds with vampires. Like in True Blood, witches use necromancy to control them. Mythological and folkloric enemies. I'm going to try and say this correctly. Strigoni benefici. This, in Italian folklore, are benevolent witches who protect humans from vampires. Dampiers, we mentioned before, in Balkan folklore, they're the offspring of a vampire and human and often possess the ability to detect and destroy vampires. I am running out of content. I need to hurry this up. I've been messing with my eyes for far too long. Modern enemies in pop culture. Humans. They're often aware of vampires and join forces to destroy them, like in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Also in Indiana Jones, in the Last Crusade. And then in X-Men, the comics, they sometimes fought vampires and had storylines that would involve Wolverine and Jubilee. So why? Why do people like vampires? That's a great question. They drink your blood. They torture you. Not really a good time. But the appeal, and again, having turned Dracula into some hot stuff count. Okay, so why are people interested in vampires? Well, aside from the whole Dracula thing, wow. This is, honestly, talking and doing your makeup like this at the same time, it's not easy. Supernatural attractiveness. Evolutionary psychology suggests that women are drawn to exaggerated versions of desirable traits in real life mates. Vampires often embody these features: immortality, power, and allure. And I mean, my husband's not a vampire, but I find him alluring. Super cute. freaking love his face. That's some of them. The erotic symbol that they are. The vampires evoke desire, submission, and dominance. And though I do find it hot when he takes control, the idea of being submissive is not in my personality. But some women like it, and that is totally cool. Good for you, girl. And this one's a little weird. Blood and lust intertwine in our secret desires. So, lust, yes. Blood, not so much. The only time I'm ready to consume blood is if it's in my gravy from a nice steak or pot roast. I love gravy. Identity and community. And this makes a lot of sense. Beyond power, clinical vampires, and these are people who identify as vampires, seek identity and connection. Okay, I really love this lipstick, but like the second day I used it, the whole freaking stick just went crazy. Not too, okay, I call this my vampire lipstick. Like I said, I'm going out tonight. It's 24 Black Cherry in Milani. I love this lipstick. It's so pretty, but we're not talking about makeup. Those are the reasons why people like vampires. Now real vampires, like clinical vampires, they exist. This isn't working in my favor. There are, as I said, people who identify as vampires. And this is more of a cultural thing. They believe they were born with this condition rather than being human. They feed on energy either by drinking blood or through psychic means, which is that I mentioned in the Chinese drama / comic I mentioned. I don't like how that turned out. Real vampires embrace their need to feed and use the vampire figure as a symbol of self-empowerment. They identify others with similar needs and form a community. This community, it expands from like Russia to America and all over the place, connected by the internet. I'm gonna go finish my mascara. I'm gonna go do that and I'll be right back. Okay. Yeah, I like that. That kind of brings us to the end of our video here. And usually you will see me put sparkles all over my face, but I feel like vampire makeup should probably be, well, okay. Oh, I forgot about this. So, I didn't come across any reference to sparkly diamond-skinned vampires, but I didn't look for it. Shame on me. I did come across, in the early days of TikTok, a young woman who looked like she knew what she might be talking about when it came to vampires. She said that in early vampire lore, that was actually a thing. So, as much as people make fun of it, that is potentially one of their many attributes, at least originally. I don't know. So here's my question. Who is your favorite vampire? Do you like vampires? What's your favorite vampire book, story? I have Interview with a Vampire and Bride, I think is about a vampire. I know it's about a werewolf. But the girl on the cover has fangs, so maybe she's a vampire. I'll be honest, I asked my husband to get it for me for one of my, oh no, we had wedding gift money. I asked him for it as one of the 2 books he said he would get me from our discount. And I got it because everybody really liked it and I wanted to read it. But so those are the 2 on my list, at least book-wise. I can't think of any others. I was going to do a harder line, but I kind of like how this looks without it, and I'm afraid of messing it up. Maybe I'll just do the outer part. Comment below, who's your favorite? Actually, I'm not going to invite the Twilight talk. Okay, I think I'm just going to spray my face down and call this good. Okay, I guess you can watch. Okay, I was going to maybe do my hair, but here's the thing. I kind of like it the way it is. I have natural waves and I let it air dry, so it looks a little more witchy, I guess, which will be our 3rd video in this series. Yay! I won't tell you what October's is, because that's going to be a fun one. I am struggling to find stories to do a 2nd video with, so there might not be a 2nd video for that one. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you don't mind my rambling. I hope you like the look. I'm pretty happy with it. Like I said, these are inspired by the myth that we are talking about, but it's still going to be me. I'm not looking to do cosplay, and I'm not a makeup artist by any means. I'm just a normie. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had fun. Let's do a little fun with Alexa. Alexa, set room to red.
A few things share the name room. Which one did you want?
Office. Na 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 na. Do 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 do. I don't have the rights to any music that would fit, so do do do. Now I'm getting out of hand. This is what it's going to look like for our next video. I'm gonna film it and it'll be great, and we're gonna talk about vampires in history and stories. Some popular, some unknown. It's going to be great fun. I hope you will come watch it, and I'll see you then. Bye.